The galaxy had seen many rulers, but none like Vaynor, the warrior king of the Thaldrak Dominion. His name alone was enough to silence rebellions, and his armies once stretched across hundreds of star systems. He was feared, respected, and obeyed. But greatness has a price, and enemies never sleep. For years, the Council of Stars had grown tired of Vaynor's power. They called him dangerous, too proud, too unwilling to bow to their fragile politics. In their eyes, his victories were threats, and his loyalty to honor was an old way of thinking that no longer had a place in a galaxy ruled by diplomacy and compromise. They waited for the moment he would stumble. That moment came in the Battle of Scarath Prime. Vaynor's fleet was ambushed not only by rivals, but by supposed allies. Ships that once flew his banner turned against him. Commanders who once pledged their lives to him now fired on his warship. The betrayal was swift, brutal, and without mercy. His forces scattered. His throne shattered. His armies were gone. When the battle ended, Vaynor himself was thrown down to the frozen world of Cardus 9, a barren, icy wasteland orbiting a dying star. His enemies declared it his grave. No aid would come. No ship would rescue him. The warrior king had fallen, and the galaxy celebrated his downfall. Vaynor lay in the snow, his armor cracked, his body wounded. Each breath was fire in his lungs. His vision blurred as the cold bit into him. The once proud king felt the weight of silence pressing on him. For the first time in centuries, he was alone. The alien races of the council watched from afar, but none moved to help him. To them, leaving him to perish was safer than showing him mercy. He was a relic of another time, better forgotten than remembered. Days passed. The icy winds tore at his body. His strength faded with every hour. He thought of his people, scattered and leaderless. He thought of the countless battles he had won, the enemies he had crushed, the oaths he had sworn. Was this truly how it would end? Not with a final duel, not in glory, but in the slow, bitter silence of exile. Then, on the 5th day, he saw fire in the sky. A ship descended through the storm, rough and scarred, its hull covered with burn marks and patched steel. It was not sleek like the ships of the Council. It did not shine with polished metals or glow with advanced engines. It was rugged, loud, and alive with heat. Humans, Vaynor had heard of them. A young species, barely a whisper in the long history of the galaxy. The Council called them reckless. Too stubborn, too emotional, too unrefined. They were dismissed as insignificant, a species that had not yet learned the weight of power. But as the ship landed, snow swirling around its landing gear, Vaynor felt something strange. He felt hope. The ramp lowered and figures emerged. Clad in simple armor, carrying rifles across their backs, the humans moved with purpose. They looked small compared to Vaynor's towering frame, fragile compared to the armored giants he once commanded. But their eyes, sharp, determined, burning with something he had not seen in the Council for years, met his. One of them, a woman with a scar across her cheek, knelt beside him. She pressed her hand against his chest, feeling the faint pulse. "He's alive," she said, her voice steady. "Get the medkit." Another man moved quickly, pulling supplies from a pack. They bound his wounds, poured warmth back into his frozen limbs, and lifted him with a strength that seemed far greater than their size should allow. They carried him into their ship away from the howling winds of Cardus 9. Inside, Vaynor felt warmth again. Not only from the heat of the engines, but from the presence of these strange humans. They did not look at him with fear or hatred. They did not see him as a threat to be eliminated or a relic to be discarded. They saw only a wounded soul in need of help. When he opened his eyes again, days later, he lay on a medical bed. His body was wrapped in bandages, his strength slowly returning. The humans sat nearby, talking in low voices. Their ship was alive with sound. Machines humming, boots echoing against the steel floor, laughter drifting from one corner. A human officer noticed he was awake and walked over. "You're lucky we found you," the officer said. "Most would have left you to die out there." Vaynor's voice was weak, but his words carried weight. "Why?" he asked. "Why save me? I am no friend to your people. Even my own allies left me." The officer smiled faintly. "Because that's not who we are. You were alive, and that was enough. No one deserves to be left in the snow to die." Vaynor stared at him, unable to answer. In his world, survival was built on strength and loyalty. Mercy was rare, kindness rarer still. Yet here were these humans, outsiders in the galaxy, risking their lives to save him, a broken king. As the ship carried him away from Cardus 9, Vaynor felt something stir in his chest. It was not just gratitude. It was something deeper, something he had not felt since his earliest days of battle. It was the sense that his story was not over. For though the galaxy had abandoned him, humanity had not. And in their eyes he saw a truth the Council had long forgotten. Strength is not measured by power or titles. It is measured by the will to stand beside another, even when all others turn away. Vaynor closed his eyes, letting the hum of the human ship lull him into rest. The fire within him, once dimmed, began to burn again. The warrior king had been left to perish, but humanity had chosen to save him. And because of that choice, the galaxy would one day tremble again. Of the ISS Resolute echoed through its steel corridors as Vaynor slowly regained his strength. Days had passed since the humans had lifted him from the icy grave of Cardus 9, yet he still could not understand why. No other race would have risked their lives for him, especially not a broken king with no throne. And yet here he was, alive because of them. From the medical bay, he listened to the sounds of the ship. Unlike the silent halls of the Thaldrak warships, the human vessel was alive with noise. Crew members argued over repairs, laughed at old stories, and sang in rough voices as they worked. To Vaynor, it was strange. Their discipline seemed loose, almost chaotic. Yet somehow the ship still ran smoothly. They were bound not by fear or hierarchy, but by something else, something stronger. One morning, the woman who had first tended to him entered. Her name was Captain Arya Holt. She stood tall, her uniform practical and worn from years of use. She smiled when she saw him sitting upright. "You heal fast," she said. "Most wouldn't survive those wounds." "I should not have survived," Vaynor admitted. His deep voice carried both pride and disbelief. "The Council left me to die. Even my allies turned their backs." Arya's smile faded. "The galaxy can be cruel. But humans, we don't abandon someone just because it's easier. We fight for each other. That's how we survive." Her words struck him. In his world, loyalty was earned through power and fear. In theirs, it seemed to come from choice. Over the next days, Vaynor walked the ship, observing. He saw how the crew treated each other, not as tools, but as family. A mechanic shared food with a tired soldier. A young navigator laughed with an old engineer as they studied star charts. Even the captain ate with her crew, listening to their jokes and worries as though they were equals. Vaynor had commanded thousands, yet never had he seen such unity. These humans were fragile compared to his kind, but their spirit was unbreakable. Soon he began to train with them. Despite his injuries, his body was strong and his mind sharper still. The soldiers welcomed him, curious to learn from the legendary warrior king. They sparred in the training bay, wooden sticks replacing deadly blades. At first, Vaynor dominated easily. His strength, his speed, his centuries of combat made him nearly untouchable. But what surprised him was how quickly the humans adapted. They learned from every mistake, every blow they took. They never gave up. Even when they were beaten down, bruised and exhausted, they would rise again, eyes burning with determination. "You fight like those who know their lives are short," Vaynor said one evening, lowering his practice blade after another grueling match. One of the soldiers grinned through his sweat. "That's because they are short. We don't have centuries, so every battle counts." The word stayed with him. Perhaps that was why humans fought harder than most. Their lives burned quickly but brightly, like stars on the edge of collapse. Just as he began to feel a strange bond forming, danger arrived. The Resolute's alarms blared one evening, red lights flashing across the corridors. Captain Arya's voice echoed through the ship. "Enemy fleet incoming. All hands, battle stations." From the viewport, Vaynor saw them, sleek council ships cutting through space, their symbols shining like blades. They had found him. The lead vessel sent a transmission. The council's voice was cold, full of authority. "Deliver the traitor Vaynor to us. Hand him over and you may leave unharmed. Resist and be destroyed." The humans gathered in the command deck. The crew looked to their captain. Arya stood firm. "They want him. They won't get him." "Ready the weapons." Vaynor's eyes widened. "You would defy the council. For me, you owe me nothing. If you give me to them, your ship will live." Arya looked at him, her gaze steady. "We don't abandon our own. Not now, not ever." The word struck him harder than any blade. They had accepted him not as a prisoner or burden, but as one of their own. The battle that followed was brutal. The humans fought like no other race Vaynor had seen. Their ship shook under enemy fire, yet the crew never faltered. They shouted commands, rushed to damaged stations, and kept fighting even as sparks rained from broken consoles. Their weapons were fewer, their armor weaker, but they refused to bow. Vaynor joined them. His towering frame moved through the corridors, steadying collapsing beams, pulling injured soldiers to safety, and lending his voice to the chaos. His presence alone gave the crew strength, but it was their courage that gave him something even greater, a reason to fight again. The Resolute took blow after blow, yet the humans pressed forward. They turned every weakness into a strength, every setback into a lesson. Their unpredictability shocked the Council ships, who expected them to retreat. Instead, they struck back with fire and fury, crippling 2 enemy vessels before the rest pulled away. When the last Council ship retreated into the void, the Resolute was scarred but alive. The crew cheered, exhausted yet victorious. Vaynor stood among them, silent at first. He had seen countless battles, but never one like this. These humans had stood against impossible odds, not because of orders or fear, but because of loyalty to each other, and to him. Later, as the ship drifted in the quiet of space, Arya approached him. "Still think you should have been left to die?" she asked softly. Vaynor shook his head. For the first time in many years, there was fire in his eyes. "No, I see now. Your people. You fight with a spirit the galaxy does not understand. Where others see weakness, I see strength. You are not reckless. You are not insignificant. You are warriors," Arya smiled. "Then maybe you found the right place to stand." Vaynor looked out at the stars. For centuries he had fought for his throne, his empire, his pride. Now he felt something different. A bond not of command but of choice. These humans had not just saved his life. They had given him purpose again. And deep in his heart he knew this was only the beginning. It had been weeks since the Council's failed attempt to capture the fallen warrior king. Reports spread quickly across star systems. Vaynor was alive, and he was not alone. Stranger still, he was traveling with humans, the very species the Council dismissed as insignificant. Some mocked the idea, others ignored it. But deep down, unease spread like fire in dry grass. On board the ISS Resolute, Vaynor stood taller each day. His wounds healed, but it was more than his body that had recovered. His spirit, once broken by betrayal, now burned with renewed purpose. Humanity had shown him a truth long forgotten, that loyalty, courage, and trust were worth more than fleets or crowns. The humans treated him not as a relic or a tool, but as a comrade. They laughed with him, trained with him, and listened when he spoke of ancient wars. And in return, Vaynor shared his knowledge of strategy, battle, and honor. Slowly, something unshakable formed between them, a bond of respect. But the Council would not let the legend of Vaynor rise again. A massive armada assembled at the edge of Council space. Dozens of ships, sleek and deadly, designed to crush resistance in a single strike. Their mission was simple: end the warrior king once and for all, and destroy anyone who stood with him. When the Resolute's scanners detected the fleet, the crew gathered in the command deck. The holographic display showed wave after wave of enemy ships. The sight was overwhelming. "They're coming for you," said Captain Arya Holt, "and they won't stop until either you or they are gone." Vaynor's gaze was steady. "Then we will face them. I have no army, no throne, but I have you, and together we will show the galaxy that betrayal cannot kill honor." The humans exchanged glances. Fear flickered in their eyes, but behind it was determination. They had fought against impossible odds before. They would do it again. The battle began at the star system of Drenmar's Rift. The Council fleet arrived in full force, their formation precise, their firepower overwhelming. Against them, the lone Resolute looked small, fragile, almost laughable. But appearances meant nothing when humanity was involved. The humans fought with a wild, unpredictable energy that no alien fleet could match. Their maneuvers defied logic, turning weaknesses into strengths. They struck at supply ships instead of warships, forcing the enemy to scatter. They used asteroid fields as cover, weaving through deadly debris with fearless precision. Vaynor stood beside Arya on the command deck, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. He directed the humans with brilliant tactics, combining their daring instincts with his mastery of war. Every time the Council thought they had cornered the Resolute, the humans slipped free like smoke, striking back harder than before. The council commanders grew frustrated. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. The humans were too reckless, too stubborn, too impossible to predict. And with Vaynor guiding them, their defiance became something terrifying, a storm the council could not contain. As the battle raged, more began to join them. Mercenaries, exiles, and forgotten warriors who had once admired Vaynor heard of his survival. They came not for a crown, but for the fire that humans had reignited in him. One by one, ships arrived, battered but willing to fight. A broken fleet began to form around the Resolute, united not by politics but by loyalty. The tide began to shift. The council fleet, once confident, now found itself outmaneuvered, outmatched in spirit if not in numbers. For every human ship that fell, 2 more struck back with ferocity. For every loss, their determination only grew. Then came the moment that would echo across the stars. The council's flagship, a massive dreadnought, advanced to crush the rebellion in a single decisive blow. Its weapons glowed, ready to unleash destruction. The enemy commander declared over the comms, "Your defiance ends here. You are nothing compared to the council's might." Vaynor stepped forward, his voice booming across the channel. "You call it might. I call it cowardice. You left me to die because you feared what I stood for. But now I stand not alone. I stand with humans, and they are worth 1,000 fleets." At his signal, the humans launched their final strike. They poured every ounce of courage, every spark of ingenuity into the assault. Small fighters darted close, exploiting weaknesses no other species would dare approach. The Resolute, scarred but unyielding, drove straight into the dreadnought's shadow, unleashing firepower at point-blank range. The dreadnought trembled, its shields breaking under the relentless assault. With one final coordinated strike, its core overloaded, and the colossal ship exploded in a storm of fire and light. Silence fell across the battlefield. The council fleet, leaderless and broken, began to scatter. For the first time in centuries, the council knew fear. When the smoke cleared, Vaynor stood before the assembled fleet, his image broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. His armor was scarred, his face marked with battle, but his presence was unshakable. "When all others abandoned me," he declared, his voice steady and proud, "humans gave me their strength. They fought not for crowns or power, but for loyalty and honor. Today they stood against an empire, and they did not break. Remember this day, galaxy. Remember that when kings fall, humans rise." The message spread faster than any fleet could travel. Across worlds, across empires, people whispered in awe of the humans who had defied the impossible. They were no longer dismissed as reckless or insignificant. They were seen for what they truly were, warriors with unbreakable spirit. And Vaynor, once a fallen king, was reborn, not as a ruler of the Thaldrak dominion, but as a brother to humanity. His throne was no longer built on fear but on trust. His legacy was no longer a tale of betrayal but of redemption. As the Resolute sailed into the stars, scarred but undefeated, its crew laughed and sang once more. Vaynor stood among them, a smile breaking across his face. For the first time in centuries, he was not alone. And in the quiet of the cosmos, the galaxy trembled, not at the power of fleets or empires, but at the knowledge that humans had proven themselves. They had chosen to save when others abandoned, to fight when others surrendered, to stand when others fled. This was humanity's gift, and because of it, the stars would never be the same.